and Dead Presidents, another classic. How did that come about?
Well, I had to really compete for that role with a lot of different people because the Hughes brothers weren't sure which way they wanted to go with that role. At one point, they were considering casting a white cat as uh, Staff Sergeant Cleon. Um, just briefly, but I mean that just gives you an idea of the breadth of different types of people they were thinking about casting for that role. So I had to really come in there swinging, you know, and yeah, it was a very competitive time. There were so many talented cats back then, and a lot of people wanted that particular role. A lot of people wanted that particular role, and I got the blessing.
How was it like on set?
It was amazing. It was amazing. We were all so young, and we were all so ambitious, and it was such an amazing time because we were all probably like 22 years old. I think Chris might have been the oldest one of us. I think Chris might have been 23. The rest of us were like 21, 22. We were young, wild, and crazy, man. You know what I'm saying? And I remember I met Terrence on that picture for the first time. And that cat was just something else, man. Everybody had like their own thing, their own thing, right? But Terrence, this cat was dressing like the era even when we weren't filming. You know what I mean? And he had that heavy accent. He's like, man, you watch, man. I'm gonna get an Oscar one day, man. And he had the perm and everything. I was like, where are you from, man? Where are you from, cat? We hit it off immediately though, man. I never really hung with, I hadn't hung with too many cats from the South other than Houston when I did Jason's Lyric. So just from the minute we met, we just hit it off, man. And like I I admired his confidence in himself. He was like, "Oh, you watch, man. I'm gonna." Yeah, man. He was very confident about where he was headed in life, and I'm not one of those kind of people where I don't like people being confident. I like when people are confident because secure people, it's almost like you can kind of trust them a little bit more. It's the insecure people you gotta watch because you never know when they're gonna snap. You know what I'm saying? So you have a cat like that, then you have a cat like the great Keith David, who was just such an amazing. I mean, I don't have to tell you, man. Keith is like one of the top cats, and I'll never forget one time we were doing this scene, and I hadn't slept the night before on purpose because I read somewhere that Dustin Hoffman didn't sleep while preparing for a scene because he thought it might give him an edge in the scene or something like that. So I read that and I said, okay, wow. And I didn't tell anybody. And I said, I'm going to go into this scene and I'm going to be, you know, sleep deprived and let's see how it affects my performance, right? I'm 21 years old, not thinking about this shit. I'm just like, yeah, let me try that. So I go in and I'm doing the scene and everything like that. And as the day goes on, I'm starting to nod. I'm starting to nod out, right? And somehow or another, right, I'm drinking coffee nonstop. And Keith is looking at me while we're filming the scene. He's just looking at me, right? So we finished filming the scene, right? And then Keith is like, let me talk to you a minute, man. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? I mean, we worship Keith on that set. He's Keith motherfucking David, right? So I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? And he looks at me and he's like, motherfucker, are you high? And I said, what are you talking about? I said, of course not. I would never come to set high, right? Like, that's insane. And he was like, well, I noticed you nodding, motherfucker. You just nodding out in the middle of the motherfucking scene. And I'm just like, oh, yes, Keith. Yes, Keith David. Let me explain to you. I was inspired by Dustin Hoffman and blah, 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 blah. And he looks at me and he says, what happens if you didn't have your close-up first. He's like, a scene like this, it kind of hinges on your close-up. What happens if your close-up wasn't first? And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, motherfucker, you would have been fucked up. And I was like, yeah. And he said, not only that, you're usually a giving actor, like you're giving to the actors, but today you've fallen asleep during the, when the camera's on them, I'm basically like falling out, right? And he's like, that's not the kind of reputation you want to have. So he gives me this lecture about why I shouldn't have done that. And then he says, do you know what Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman when Dustin Hoffman did that? And I said, no, what did he say? And he says, next time, try acting, right? And so I was like, oh, wow. I had this deep, profound, moment. And then he looks at me and he says, look, your heart's in the right place. But next time, go to sleep and just dream that you didn't sleep. And then he walks away. I'm standing there like sleep deprived, mind blown, like go to sleep and dream that I didn't sleep. It's like, God damn, if you have that kind of control over your mind. But that's Keith David for you. So I never did that again. I never stayed up on purpose to try to have an edge in the scene.
Wow, that's deep. And when you were shooting that movie, did you ever think it would become a classic?
When I read that script, I knew that we had something very special. And I just thought that if we can put what's on the page onto the screen, we got something. And the Hughes brothers at that time were like savants, like young geniuses. Hollywood was on their. They could do whatever they could do whatever they want. These cats had carte blanche, and so knowing that I was working with, them, really, really made me feel like we had something special. Combined with the script was amazing. The script was fantastic. And then the cast, when I started seeing who was cast and what roles, I said, okay, we got something special here, man. Like, we got something special.